Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever part of the world you are in. Welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Live. So, once again, guys, we are very, very excited to have you join us here, and we look forward to a very in-depth discussion today about a very, very hot topic. So, well, first of all, let me just talk about some housekeeping stuff.
Please.
Then we'll detail a few things. Then we'll launch into our conversation and so forth. So we want to inform you guys, be on the lookout next week for a video about an interview we did with, and you guessed it, is Cyrus Jensen.
It is a phenomenally good interview. That
Incredible.
guy really
is.
Boy, the knowledge he has about what's going on.
Oh my gosh.
It even stunned us, and we do this all day.
I know. Well, he lived in China for over a decade. What I truly admire about Cyrus, Ross, is how down to earth he is.
Oh, is he ever?
The guy got my respect. It's just how down to earth he is. So be on the lookout for it next week. We don't know the date yet when it's going to be released, but just keep an eye on that one. We are also in the process of coordinating some other interviews with some key guests that you will enjoy, some of the ones you guys suggested. But also don't forget, if there is one specific guest you would like to have us invited him or her, please reach out to whatever channel where he's at or she's at and inform them about our channel, because some of them might not know about us. So we're growing. So
Matter of fact, our subscription has just passed
28,000.
28,000.
Yeah, thanks to you guys, and thanks for word of mouth from you. It's very, very important, and we want to thank you for all that. We'll take this opportunity also to thank our Patreon members. That list is growing, so we appreciate your support. And to those who, if you like our videos and you want truly to support us, consider joining our Patreon membership. So to all of you, we truly and sincerely we say thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Truly. Well, we're going to talk about what has to be the number one item in the news these days.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, there are 4 other areas that look like they're really important to keep our audience involved with or up to date. Let's keep them informed. What a concept. Afghan President Ghani is in the United Arab Emirates.
That's correct, Russ. The first report that came up last Sunday when Kabul fell was that he hopped on a helicopter and headed out to Tajikistan. Well, guess what? United Arab Emirates has invited him and his family, as they say, on a humanitarian ground, which I don't buy that argument. That's me. I speak for myself. I care less for the guy because he was in it for power more so than for the the goodwill of the Afghani people.
Oh my God,
No.
is that?
Yeah.
We'll dive into that. We'll dive into that.
And it was a talk, by the way, that he fled with $164 million. We do not know that. We are in the process of confirming that information because there are conflict reports,
And amazing thing is they did it in cash.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, the one thing that, we all need to know is that his daughter, she lives in New York City. So nothing wrong with that. She's a film producer. Yeah, she's in the film industry. So it doesn't matter. But anyway, that's where he's at today.
Here's something that has remarkable significance.
Mm-hmm.
Russia rejects any role of the U.S. forces in Central Asia.
Oh, that was what's interesting about that, Ross? No media in the West or the East reported on that, because that was one of the key information in the meeting between Vladimir Putin and President Biden back in June 16. Remember, we did a coverage on the summit between Russia and the U.S. Well, guess what, guys? Vladimir Putin made it clear to the U.S. there will be no U.S. military presence in Central Asia. And this explains now, to me personally, the way I think about it, or I look at it, the way it explains to me now why Pakistan went ahead and turned down the U.S. request for establishing a base for the drones and so forth. So Russia made it clear they rejected that. That was one of the key points Vladimir Putin insisted on during that meeting. which did not get to report back then, and now some media outlets are revisiting that topic. So after the fall of Kabul, now it became clear.
Well, Iran has increased its uranium enrichment program.
Oh, indeed. That was a reaction to the fall of Kabul, because remember, the fall of Kabul now is going to have a geopolitical ramification outside Afghanistan, outside the region. This is going to be on a global level.
I was going to say, how about the entire Earth?
Earth, how about that? Yeah. Well, because they realized that the credibility of the U.S.
Has sunk.
Yeah,
Absolutely sunk.
So Iran said, sure, you are not going to want to go back to the terms of the original JCPOA, then we're going to just increase uranium. So they want to head with it. Now the U.S. is telling Iranians, well, we will offer another alternatives. Well, Iran said, no, we're moving forward. So,
here's one that there's a big story, but we're only going to touch the surface on it.
okay.
There has been a major explosion in Pakistan.
That is correct. That happened just actually a few days ago in a celebration of what is called Ashura. Ashura is an Islamic holiday for the Shia Muslims around the world, and that's usually commemorates the death of the Imam Hussein back in Karbala, which is modern day Iraq, back in 680 AD.
Been a while.
That's how far back it goes. So the Shia Muslims around the world celebrate Ashura. This is why you guys, I don't know, some of you might see this or not. In Lebanon, for example, you see some individuals with, batting their back with, that's the commemoration for the Imam assassination. So there were 3 dead in Pakistan and 50 were injured from that explosion.
There's got to be a very big story with that, but that's not our topic today.
It's not today. No.
Our topic is what's actually going on in Afghanistan with a little bit of the history and maybe even a small projection as to where we think this is going.
Yeah.
With an emphasis on what's going on the ground right now.
That's correct. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And just for you guys to know, like we always do, once we open up the floor for questions, just please make sure to write down question so we can go faster through those, as many questions as possible. So we're in for some very good conversation and in-depth understanding of that part of the world.
Well, it looks like an endless war has finally ended. We know that.
So we thought.
Well, we're all keeping our fingers crossed on this one.
I know.
We know that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney went after bin Laden after 9/11. Went in and kicked butt, and in 6 months they had done the job. They got bin Laden. Then they decided to nation build.
Yeah. Well, actually, just to make sure of some information, they didn't get Osama bin Laden back there in 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, what happened after the 6 months, he fled.
Oh,
the area,
okay,
so,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because
misinformation on my part.
Yeah, we only got Osama bin Laden in 2011. Actually.
Oh, that's
that's
a long time later.
Yeah, it is. So what happened in those first 6 months? It was the operations were going very, very well in Afghanistan from 2 aspects: from special ops and from the Central Intelligence Agency. It was after those first 6 months that really became a problem in Afghanistan. And why is that, you may ask? It became a problem because the nature of the mission has changed. It became now a nation building. And this is usually where the problems happen. What happens back then, after 2001, is that the Taliban, interesting enough, is that till today, the United States does not classify Taliban as a terrorist group. Yeah, it's not on the list. I checked that myself this morning just to make sure. I knew about it, I was aware of it, but it was never classified as a terrorist group. So the Taliban at that time said, Al-Qaeda is nothing but a guest, and usually the tradition in Afghanistan, you'll die for your guest. I was in Afghanistan. I spent a few years there. And just to share some basic stories with them, I used to eat dinner with Afghanis. Wonderful people. That's how much I trusted them. And they trusted me.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because I was looking at them as a human being, no more, no less.
Yeah.
They were looking at me as a human being, no more, no less. I'll eat with them. I'll sit on a floor. I ate with my hands, the way we eat, no fork, nothing, because that's the tradition. So, and I ate one of their best dishes. It's known in Afghanistan. It's called karai. So, to those who knows about Afghanistan tradition. And right there, we became, as a matter of fact, they invited me over to their homes. We couldn't go because there's a protocol with how we operate and all that stuff. So I politely turned that down, but I ate with them on compounds and all that stuff. So just to highlight the idea of how things are in Afghanistan. And that is one of the problems we did not understand, is we didn't understand the culture. That's where was the issue was. That's why things took a different turn after the first 6-8 months back in 2001. And it led to what we saw the images on Sunday.
Oh, tragic. Just tragic.
Yeah. We didn't understand that Afghanistan is a tribal society. It's not, yes, it is a country, it's there. But it's not the country that you and I and Aras understand it, with all government establishments, with all institutions, with all, doesn't matter democratic or not, that's beside the point. They live life according to their culture, according to their customs.
Exactly.
Yeah. The problem we always have, and you will think we will learn from history, we always go and try to impose our ways of governance, that is, our way of thinking, our way of even conversing. They have their own customs, and we did not understand that. And when we enter into this nation building, it took a life of its own completely. And that's why we end up staying 20 years. And we're going to get into the cost of all that.
Oh.
Which, it's not a laughing matter. I'm laughing out of being angry and upset. It's because the waste that I was aware of it way back. I spent time in Afghanistan. So back in 2006, Ross, it became clear to me this war is not going to be won. And yet we're going to keep dragging it. And we will tell you today why that was the case. So.
Well, let's put the cost right up front.
Sure.
$2.3 trillion taxpayer money went to this. What do you call it, a war? What are we going to call this? I want to call it a fiasco, but I know better. I'm going to call it military action.
Yeah.
Nation building.
Nation building. Yeah. A conflict in the making.
A conflict in the making. And we say, hold, where did the money go?
That's true. And that is a big, I got some numbers here to share with our viewers as well. So the way, and I fact-checked this information, guys, from 2 separate sources, and they both confirm, give or take few millions here and there. So, one of the key ones that I found was a project, a war project study was done by Brown University. So usually academia will conduct their own research and all that stuff. And you might wonder why I didn't go with Harvard.
Why didn't you go?
Well, I want, because most of the retired defense people end up working for Harvard. So you can just see where they're pushing the agenda. So, but here is the thing. One example where this 2.26 or $2.3 trillion went. So here's the example. If you invested $10,000 in 2001, you would have ended up making, by the end of this past week, you would have ended up making about $133,000 on that if you invested in Lockheed Martin.
Oh, wow.
You end up making more than $130,000 if you invested with Northrop Grumman. You'll end up making over $107,000 if you invested with Boeing. You end up making over $72,000 if you invested with General Dynamics. And you end up making over $43,000 if you invested with Raytheon. Now, what does companies have in common?
Military armaments.
They are defense contractors.
They're defense contractors.
Defense contractors. That's where things went wrong. Right after those first 6 months in 2001, you started to hear, okay, we need to rebuild Afghanistan. here is what you guys need to know. And this is not just for just you, of course, for all of us to know, because even Americans here in the United States have no clue how their taxpayers' money is wasted. I am livid at the loss and the waste of my taxpayers. I have no problem of helping those in need.
Right.
I got help in my life one day. So I don't just take, I like to give as well. You give, you don't just take in this life, you give. But the waste that went about this war is outrageous. I'm just shocked that some Americans, some of us, are just still sleeping. They need to wake up. So,
we take a look at that 2.3 trillion,
mm-hmm.
80-90% of that came back to these defense contractors and others in the United States who benefited from war and killing.
And that's the whole notion of why we get involved in conflict,
and why it lasted so long.
So long.
It was general after general. How many there were? 18 or 19? 18 generals were over this conflict. And they said such things as, we're winning. Success in Afghanistan is inevitable. I have seen the change. The situation has fundamentally changed. On and on and on. They kept giving the Congress and the president information. Well, they kept telling them these things when they clearly knew that it wasn't happening.
Yeah. Well, let's do a breakdown here quickly before we get into the geopolitical ramifications of this fall. So just out of this $2.3 trillion, I'm going to just provide some breakdown into it. So that's almost the equivalency of about $300 million a day.
That's not laughable, but it's shocking.
It is shocking. Or you could take that money and give every Afghani, which is about 40 million, $50,000 each. So, okay, if that is not enough, you take about, out of this 2.3, $85 billion went into military training of Afghans. Okay, but here is the thing. One of the other one has to do with $5 billion a year for aid to Afghanistan government. So you go back 2001 and you do the math. Okay,
20 years at 5 billion.
Yeah,
I can do that math.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And the last one has to do with the soldier salaries, the Afghanis, $750 million. Why we decided to pay their salaries is because it cost American to take a soldier from the US into Afghanistan about $1 million.
Oh,
so they figured, you know what? We're going to use 750 to pay the Afghanis. Of course, when it mattered for them to fight, they just dropped their weapon and left. It's no laughing matter here. But here's the thing. Out of that 750, almost, and don't quote me on this because I wasn't sure about the numbers that I saw, this particular one, is that half of the soldiers were ghost soldiers. They didn't even exist. They were just on paper.
But their commanders got the money.
And
kept it.
That's correct.
And sent it out of the country. And now they're living in the lap of luxury.
Yeah. And this is where the outrage comes in as far as the waste, because I'm not saying, okay, if you are to go in a country like what we did, you turn it all of a sudden, you go from one mission to the next. Why are we in this nation building stuff when we have our own problems here at home? You look at the infrastructure that is crumbling before our eyes.
Right.
And can you imagine using that money here? But that's not only the saddest part. Here is the most sad, the ones that it pains me to even mention. When you look at these defense contractors, okay, and you look at the board of directors, who sits on those boards? And I'm not gonna list the whole names. Either retired generals, either former secretaries of defense, and the Secretary of Defense. As a matter of fact, our current Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, the current one, used to sit on a Raytheon board of directors.
Wow.
And even we do have a regulation here in the United States that once you retire from the military, you have to wait 7 years before you take a civilian job. The Congress waived that. And he waived it for one reason and one reason only. Because there is a triangle. And who's in that triangle? The generals, Congress and the Pentagon. So the generals will tell the Pentagon, hey, we need more armaments, we need more money, we need to do this. The Pentagon will tell Congress, hey, we need more in this, more in that. So then the cycle will keep going. That's how things go. This war machine, that's how you feed the beast in Washington. And that has to stop at some point. Because the failure now in Afghanistan, it's on display. What have we gained?
You know, from what I can tell, and special feedback from our viewers, it is now everyone in the world who's paying attention sees the disgrace that the United States is in.
Well, we put ourselves into that.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is, you go into a nation building, you don't even understand the culture. I mean, and it doesn't work that way. You know, Washington usually does not want to hear from somebody who speaks, you know. We had one time, one of our viewers put a comment, why don't you guys run for Congress? I truly appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I tell you, I won't. I won't because I know how that institution operates and I won't function. I can't because of the trust of the constituents. And one thing in Congress, if you don't play the game, you will be marginalized. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to compromise on those principles. So that is where the problem that happened in Afghanistan. So the generals keep saying the stories. That's why, and when we do the video, we're gonna do a video about this, guys, in a detailed one. I'm gonna mention one specific aspect that some intelligence has been altered a couple of years ago regarding the Afghan from some generals. That's how sad that is. So, you know, it goes without saying about seeing those two individuals who fell to their death from the plane they were hanging.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what do you think of that image from a human side, Ross? You're a psychologist.
It breaks people's hearts to see people. If you're paying attention to other people and you see them falling from a plane to their death, you say, these people must be absolutely desperate with fear.
And that's indeed because, you know, it's a heartbreaking to see somebody's willing to cling on to the...
And the natural response is, who is to blame for this mess?
You know, yeah, it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate. So the question now that is everybody's wondering, is Afghanistan going back to what it was pre-2001? So in other words, what happened to 20 years that's been just wasted? And that is a question worth asking. It's because the future of Afghanistan cannot, and I tell you guys, I share this with you, not only from experience being there, but also from understanding of what that culture is all about. If you go way back to about 1838, when the Brits were defeated in Afghanistan. Yeah, back then.
The graveyard of empires.
That's why they call it. Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires for a reason. That's why they say that also. So what I wanted to say is, for that to work, it has to be Afghani themselves have to decide on all that. The question now is going to become is whether the Taliban, and Taliban is not now, yes, is the dominant force, but still they're going to have an inclusive government that represents all the tribes because it's a tribal society.
And what we have is some pretty well-armed tribe warlords.
That's how it works in those certain societies. In Africa is the same. In the Middle East is the same. You know, you rule with the tribe approval, and that's how it works for them. So who are we to go and say, no, you're going to have this and that, and we're going to appoint a president for you? Because that's what we did. We appointed Ashraf Ghani, who was an academician. The guy used to work for the World Bank. Well, you can just see, was there any interest in appointing him as a president? You can read between the lines.
You know, you think after the Shah of Iran and that whole fiasco, the U.S. brought in the Shah.
Yeah.
You think that somebody in government would say, this has to be a bad idea because the local population doesn't want somebody brought in from the outside.
Yeah. And usually Washington establishment doesn't like to hear that. And this is why they are only, don't get me wrong, guys, there are some great American citizens that they truly care about the country. But it just, there is no way for their voices to be heard because it's controlled by media, controlled by entities by lobbyists, by defense contractors and all this. So and this failure in Afghanistan exposes now not only the US, we're not just pointing fingers at the US, the West as a whole. And it begs the question, is the West on its last leg of its hegemony? Especially the US in that case.
Well, the popular thinking, at least at this moment, is it's on its way down.
On its way down. So, but here is the geopolitical question that many are wondering. So, what message this failure is sending to the rest of the world? And we're gonna focus at least in one area, which is Asia, because of what's going on with the US policy towards China. Okay. Once again, we just want to present the argument to you, and you reach your own conclusion. So we're just sharing the information with you. So if I were, and I speak for myself, hypothetically, if I were sitting in Saigon, if I were sitting in Philippines, Manila, if I were sitting in Taipei, I will be thinking, if I were sitting in Ukraine, I will be thinking right now, should I count on the American support?
Well, the feedback we're getting is a resounding
no. And that is exactly one of the vibration, the geopolitical vibration of this failure that's going to be sent in. It's because, whether those countries wants to accept the reality or not, it became clear now that this 20 years in Afghanistan, with all the mighty armaments we have, we couldn't defeat goat hooters with some
40 or 50-year-old weapons. I mean, you look at their weapons and they're tragically old, they still won.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, now, Ross, they might upgrade that because they took over all the equipments left in Bagram.
I saw pictures of them climbing on what must have been $100 million worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Oh, just first-rate stuff.
They're going to take, that's what it is. That's the way, what do we expect? They're going to hand the stuff over to us now. So, and that is one of the geopolitical now questions that some countries, especially this came on the eve of also the military exercises, which we did a show on that one about the US with 21 countries in the region. Now, and I've seen some comments and I read them, and thank you for those comments, guys. I truly, truly appreciate it. It was only some that are always those idiots, and I'll use the term as much as I don't like to saying, well, how much does China pay you for this? It's pathetic. That is pathetic. So anyway, what those 21 countries, some have said in their comments that they might be forced to participate. And I can see the logic to that argument. It might be. It's because they're not paying for it. You know who's paying for all that? We do. Taxpayers' money. Americans paying for all those exercises. And for what? For what?
Well, we know who's going to benefit from it, and it's not us, the American people.
And this is one thing that you guys need to know now, that you're going to start hearing buzzwords of the war on terror 2.0. We can see this where it's going, because that's usually how the machine in Washington works.
We have to have an enemy.
We have to
put another $1 trillion into armaments and on and on and on and on.
And it becomes the question now, is the movement or the reduction of US presence in the Middle East is geared towards encircling China? A lot of geopolitical analysts are sort of leaning towards that. I'm included in that, or in that category, shall we say. Yes, we are moving our, shall we say, sight from the Middle East into Asia, because what we're trying to do with China. The problem I see with that is China is no Afghanistan. Those kind of, you're dealing with some major, and those countries will be wiped out, whoever comes in the middle of that.
An interesting point is that there are 2 embassies that did not close in Afghanistan.
2 of them. 2. Yeah, Russia
and China.
Yeah, it gives you right there. Well, because you think about the post now, it's a fait accompli. But here is what's going to lie ahead. This is what I always say. China, if China plays its card right, this will be this is their ticket per se. If they help Afghanis rebuild their infrastructure, they got it. But also we need to know China has an interest in making that happen because of the BRI.
And because of $3 trillion worth of rare earth minerals and other things.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
So, and they're going to do it without a bullet.
And that is the smart strategy. So just for you guys to know, the idea of, you know, this geopolitical failure in Afghanistan, it sends some sort of signals as to the outside the region, the Central Asia, the Southeast Asia, and so forth. All this is going to now always going back to the drawing board and reconsider their strategies for everyone.
And we're looking at new alliances and the power of new alliances, and perhaps the emergence of new alliances will define the 21st century.
Geopolitics, that's correct.
Geopolitics.
That's correct. So I couldn't agree with you more, Russ, because 21st century geopolitics is going to be a defined moment by those new alliances, because now you start to question, is NATO relevant?
It sounds like NATO.
So anyway, let's go into some questions here, and I'm gonna have a question for you guys. I'll save the best for last. So, all right. TNT, thank you so much for the super sticker here, and we're gonna ask TNT question here. No, so thank you very much, TNT. Datless, thank you for being here and for joining us. Question: members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, conducted military exercises that coincided with the U.S. withdrawal in Afghanistan. Is this why they left in such a hurry? I don't think so. I do not think so. The reason being, Datless, is because those exercises that the U.S. conducted, those are an annual ones. So regardless whatever happens, they were still going to move forward with them. Of course, some countries can always decline that one, but I just do not see the link between the two. What I see the link with is the Russia-China military exercises, because I mean, that was very, very, very interesting
and significant
for what they did, both the Russians and the Chinese. All right, next question. Ariel, good to see you, Ariel. Question: do you foresee anti-terrorist collaboration between China and Russia and the new Afghan government in anti-terrorist operations, though more limited, only to secure a new order in the region?
Oh, what an interesting
question. Incredible question, Ariel. Thank you so much for that. I do foresee that cooperation for two main reasons. One of them is those two countries, Russia and China, they do have some Muslim communities within them. You know, they don't want any issues whatsoever, unlike what's going on in Pakistan, for example. And the second thing is they will want that cooperation because that will keep the U.S. out. Of course, to the Russians, the presence of the U.S. in Afghanistan was doing the Russians a favor, believe it or not. Yeah, they was doing the Russians a favor, because Russians didn't have to spend money on dealing with the security issues regarding the Muslim minorities. No, that's how geopolitics works. But for China and Russia, no, because this is a way out for the U.S. to be out of that area, and they can concentrate their resources on a much bigger picture, especially for the Russians on the Black Sea and on the eastern side, and for China in the South China Sea and so forth. Great question, Ariel. Thank you. Next one, Akila. Thank you so much for being here. The question: does U.S. withdrawal in Afghanistan mean more activities in South China Sea? Yesterday, German warship was south of China Sea. What does U.S. expect from it?
Oh boy.
Incredible question.
Yeah. Well, we certainly expect to see more U.S. focus on the South China Sea. What do you make of this German thing, though?
Well, Germany basically, just because, remember, the U.S. allowed the Nord Stream 2. Remember that one?
Yeah.
They allowed Nord Stream 2 because Germany asked for Nord Stream 2. What was I going to say?
Well, about the German ship. And
No. It has to do with the flow of natural gas.
yeah,
The U.S. lifted that in return for Germany to support U.S. policies. Well, one of the things is the request that Germany will also participate in any activities the U.S. does in South China Sea.
okay.
That's where the direction
It was
is.
a deal.
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, Germany, Angela Merkel is recently in Moscow. So, despite what you hear, the tensions and all that, they understand where their interests are. And now the fall of Kabul exposes now to them the Europeans going to start to think for themselves. Can we count on the U.S.? So,
And we pretty well know the answer.
yeah. So that is one of the issue for all that. So, next question. Beginner's Mind. Good to see you. I like that screen name.
Yeah.
Okay. The question: is there any possibility that the U.S. government will act recklessly soon to restore the U.S. supremacy image? For example, waging war against China at Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. What do you think,
Seems
Raz?
unlikely.
I'll let you.
I'm not sure that they'd focus on China because it's just plain too dangerous.
Yeah,
It's way too much at risk. And as we do a deep dive into Taiwan, a war over Taiwan seems extremely unlikely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I don't see that happening because despite what you see going on, countries in the region, especially ASEAN countries, they are thinking twice now about should we align ourselves with the US and be caught in the middle? Because that is what is going on in their minds right now. Because I tell you this, a conflict with China is no small matter. And if they think that's going to be just some firing of basic stuff, they're mistaken. Those countries who's going to be caught in the middle will be obliterated.
Oh yeah.
And in the case of Taiwan, usually I do not see China attacking its own. Taiwan is part of China. Interesting enough that when you guys listen to next video that we did with Cyrus, the interview, he addressed the Taiwan. He used to go there, so he knows. And
he actually said he'd been there more than a dozen
yeah,
times.
and somebody I trust his inputs into this. So Taiwan, it's the difference between the young and the old generation. So I just do not see that happening.
And he said any number of Taiwanese are now living in Shanghai and other Chinese cities because they can have a better living and have make more of a contribution.
That's correct. So
it's an old young situation.
Yeah, I don't foresee any of that happening. But China also is going to be concerned about the increase of the military and naval assets in that part of the world. So, next question, Beryakov, here you are. I was wondering where you are. So, question. Thank you for being here, Beryakov. Just today, an explosion happened again, targeting Chinese citizens in Pakistan at Balochistan. India is now active meddling in that area. Is there any info you can share on this area? No, I am not aware of that yet. I mean, I will look into it, but I am not aware of it. Of course, we all remember the tensions between India and Pakistan will always be there. As a matter of fact, and we're gonna be addressing this in our video, that India has opposed Pakistan addressing the UN National Security Council regarding Afghanistan, which to me was like, India does not understand how much the role that Pakistan plays when it comes down to bringing the Taliban and the US to the negotiating table, which is to me was not a good judgment from India part to do this one here. So I'm not aware of that one if it happens or not. Next question, Pivot Lee. Thank you for being here, Pivot. Question: did the MSM made it right that China's recent presence in Afghanistan is more associated with security rather than potential investments? Personally, it will have, let's put it in percentages. I would say 70% investments and 30% security. The reason being because the north, is it the northeast or northwest? I couldn't tell. The north, I think the north is the part where the border between Afghanistan and China. It will be a concern, and it makes perfect sense if China cut a deal with the Taliban, because Taliban can control what's going on their ground. So including in that part of the country, by not allowing any filtrations of any other elements or training.
Really important.
Yeah.
Not training terrorists to go into Chinese territory and cause trouble.
That's correct.
There's
So,
a history of that happening.
yeah. And that is where I see the reason why China is involved in this. But China mainly is because of the BRI road. Afghanistan infrastructure is going to save China a lot of money. But also Afghanistan has a lot of natural resources. So it makes perfect sense for them to get involved. Next question. Michael Fu, good to see you, Michael. I like your screen image there. So the question, with the VP of Afghanistan, Amullah Saleh, claiming to be caretaker president and the Northern Alliance not acknowledging the Taliban regime, do you think it will spiral into a civil war? That is a great question. And as a matter of fact, it could, because Afghanistan is known for that. Remember what we said earlier? It's a tribal society. Not everybody is on board with the Taliban. As a matter of fact, as we speak, the son of Shah Massoud, I don't know if you guys remember who he is, he passed away in an Al-Qaeda attack. Shah Massoud was the head of the Northern Alliance. They just freed 3 provinces, because he has his own army now. So yes, this could lead. This is why we said the political solution to Afghanistan will have to be inclusive. You cannot marginalize one tribe or give a preference to another. Everybody has to be included. And I personally, Ross, do not see them reaching that. I hate to say it. I'm an optimistic guy. Excuse me.
Yeah, we actually we actually see this in practically every human endeavor.
Yeah.
We need cooperation is remarkably challenging.
Yeah. So, especially with the Taliban coming back with, the problem with the Taliban is there is no element of trust.
Yeah.
They can go back on their word and start, governing in that style. But also remember, there are some elements from outside Afghanistan that can influence that direction one way or another. So
one of the reports we looked at said the United States is cooperating and funding some of those warlords.
Well, that's how we did with the Taliban back then. So what goes around comes around.
Yep.
So we shouldn't be expecting anything different. Next question. Kwan Lee. Good to see you, Kwan. Hello, gentlemen. Do you think the Taliban will definitely end the CIA heroin rat line? China can certainly help the Afghan people to find alternative crops and the lithium industry.
Drugs are a $400 million crop for
the Taliban.
For the Taliban.
Yes.
And getting them to give that up.
I don't see that happening. The reason because Taliban sits on a lot of cash. A lot. That's why they can fund their own operations. I just do not see them giving that up, and they will fight for that. So what the alternative? Yes, for China infrastructure. And the thing is that what the West, I am sure in Washington, they understand this, that is the success of China inside Afghanistan is going to be because of the Taliban. Because Taliban can provide that security.
Yes.
Physical security for China.
Like they do the gas pipeline currently.
Exactly. They can, and of course that will be a cut for the Taliban, which it's a business. To them, that's how it's gonna work. That's the only way I see it working. So, but as far as them giving up that, no, they won't. All right, let's see next question. Boone, here's Boone. Hi Boone, how are you? Good to see you. So, question: how much have other countries, namely NATO, spent in the country, meaning Afghanistan? I heard on the German news that last night Germany spent 1.5 trillion euros.
I know nothing.
I didn't hear of that, Boone. I can check that out. I have my own sources. per se to confirm that, but I mean, the Brits and the Germans, they did contribute some, but the bulk of the payments, it comes from us, from the US. So, but Europeans now, they're gonna be thinking twice about, how much should we be tying ourselves to the Americans, because my belief is that this failure, it is a geopolitical failure. So it's going to reverberate in different parts of the world. This is what Ross said, what you said earlier about the new alliances in the 21st century geopolitics. That's exactly what's going to be taking place. And we're already starting to see this, and Germany is going to have to think about its own interest. There are those who argue that the US is still taking over Germany by having a military presence. Yeah. And it's about time for us to. Why do we have 800 bases around the world? I mean, literally. But you have to understand the dynamics inside Washington. That's conflict is money machine.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. Yang and Yang. Good to see you. I like that name, screen name there. Question: trying to be optimistic, but will China succeed and make a difference in Afghanistan where the US and others fail miserably?
Well, they're incentivizing people by infrastructure, with money, with improved lifestyle. It seems to me they've got a much better chance because they're offering something positive, and there's no bullets attached to it, and there's no nation building attached to it.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I am optimistic about something like that only if China plays its cards right. Now remember, one thing China cannot do and will not be able to do is control the political landscape within Afghanistan. That is only for Afghans to decide on that.
As it should be.
As it should be. So China's approach, which will be smart, is I better do business, but stay away from that political entanglement because they don't want to be in the middle of it. And that explains why China did not get involved all those years, had to wait till the US left in humiliation.
They waited almost 20 years.
Yeah, that tells you about patience.
Yes.
Same thing for the Taliban. Patience, which is something we lack in the Western world. I shall not generalize, of course. So I do see China succeeding in that aspect if they play their card right. Santan, good to see you and thank you for being here. Question: I heard Blinken ask China to Afghan refugees. Is it true? And if it is true, don't you find it ironic? Because U.S. accusing China conducting Muslim genocide while asking China to accept Muslim refugees. It is ironic. No, I'm not sure of this. I didn't hear that. All I knew, it was a phone call between Mr. Wang Yi, who called Blinken, and they didn't call him to ask for refugee. They called him to express that indeed the U.S. has failed in Afghanistan. So it was not a nice call, shall we say. But as we say in English, is to put the dots on the letter. That was the China's message. No, I don't see that happening. And it will be foolish of China to accept such an offer because that's just gonna, it won't be wise to do that. This is why the US now is asking European countries, Gulf countries, including Qatar, to accept some Afghan, because you're talking about mass migration from Afghan. This is not about 1,000 or 2. We're talking about large numbers. And most countries are going to be thinking twice about, do we want to get involved into all this? That's what I see. So I don't see China doing that. And Blinken doesn't have that kind of credibility to do that. Leslie Wu, good to see you, Leslie. Question: how much of the $2 trillion has been transferred to the elite through military contract, etc.? Mission accomplished from this point of view.
Nail on the head.
It is indeed. I don't have the exact figure, but all I know is that about some $900 billion went into the contract. That's just one figure that I saw. That doesn't confirm that it is accurate or to to the T per se, but I do know it was a large sums of money that goes more than $500 billion. And those are just contracts, because here is the thing, one thing I was sure about. You take, for example, Halliburton. Well, Halliburton, when in Iraq, they used to bring oil from Kuwait charging the government about $1 million. That's how much it's a money machine. That's why conflict, and I hope Americans will wake up and say enough is enough of this nonsense, because it is nonsense. We're going into this nation building and the waste of taxpayers' money.
Do you happen to recall the statement that the former Secretary of State said about what the United States really accomplished in terms of building the greatest corruption machine in the world?
No, I don't. I don't remember that one. Yeah.
Well, he said it. He didn't say it tongue-in-cheek. He said it with real bitterness. Yeah. But that's what was really accomplished here. The level of corruption has never been seen at this level before.
It's a shame on us that we're saying, well, we need to, tell countries how to govern and how, when we couldn't govern our own home. and usually there is one thing about foreign policy. Foreign policy, this is a principle, if you will. Foreign policy starts at home. If you don't get your house in order, don't expect to make any difference in other people's lives and so forth. So I don't see that happening. So the waste, basically the amount of money, yes, it was substantial. Thank you so much, Homeversity. We truly appreciate it. So that's so kind of you guys, the ones for the sticker. We truly appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. So next question, and we'll see through this one. Just to add one thing here is that the idea of this, to go back to this last question, because it's very, very interesting. And I can see personally, and I speak for myself as one who spent time in Washington. I worked in Washington, so I'm very familiar how things work. I can just see now, there are those behind closed doors now thinking, how can we market the next conflict? How can we sell to the American people? No, we need to do this for the sake of democracy, for the sake of this. I can just see that happening now behind closed doors. And because here's the sad part. Nobody has been held accountable in Washington for all these failures. None. And you will think our system is a system of, accountability.
Forget that.
Yeah. So where is this accountability when nobody's been held accountable? The generals, the retired one, whatever. I mean, I have great respect for generals. I'm a former military myself. So I used to encounter with the generals. You get but to a point, when sometimes a general is wrong, you gotta tell him, sir, you are wrong on this. But again, because the way we have our system is defined by, you gotta agree with me no matter what. If you want your career to move forward, it becomes the question of what's in it for me, rather what's in it for our country.
Yeah, and we know that the messenger is very frequently killed.
Exactly.
Here's what's really going on. Oh, you're not going to get promoted. Oh, you're out of the military. I mean, it just... Yeah,
the system for us, it needs maybe we need the realignment of the entire system. Like what we said about the economic collapse, We might need that for us to realign everything back on track. Sometimes that's what's need to be done. So, next question. TNT, here you are. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Question, do you think the Taliban will form a more inclusive government, or is this just placating media for them to control the country?
Oh, great question.
That is an incredible question.
Yeah.
I don't claim to have the answer to that, TNT, because it's a very, very challenging. Once you understand how Afghan society is structured, you will see why it is very hard to have. Remember, the former president, I don't know, should we call him former president? Or?
No, let's call him former.
Because I don't see him going back.
He's abdicated by his absence.
By absence, yeah. Because we're the one who put him in power. So was it the will of the Afghanis? Becomes the question. Because it's a tribal society. And they can reach a consensus if they are willing to sit down and talk. But those, remember, there will always be elements of influence from outside. and inside to a degree, but the outside, for the Taliban, for example, well, with their harsh interpretation of Islam, I can just see money flowing from Saudi Arabia into that. It just, for us, like we did with them back during the Soviet era, who knows, maybe will be another element coming up soon, and we'll say, hey, we'll train you and fund you. And, yeah, it's very hard to tell at this point, and I don't have an answer for that. However, I do know one thing, that should they ever reach that inclusiveness, Afghanistan can move forward.
Yes.
And fingers crossed for that. Let's hope. So, all right, we'll do one more question here, and we're gonna have to go figure out some other stuff. Shaifo, here you are. Good to see you, and thank you for your comments, by the way. Very, very insightful. I appreciate that. Question: will Europe continue following American foreign policy, or does Afghanistan signal a new era with Europe having its own independent foreign policy?
Another outstanding,
incredible question. So that is a very tough one. It's hard to tell. You start to hear some conversations, at least in France and Germany, but not Britain, with the current government. Boris Johnson is somebody who's, it's kind of, that guy can go with whatever the wind is blowing. So you could start seeing some of that.
Well, the fact that Angela Merkel is in Moscow.
Moscow right now, because they know the importance of that relationship with the Russians, and it begs the big question of, okay, is it time for Europe really? Like the question is it time for Europe to take a step back and reevaluate itself? Why does Europe has to count on NATO to defend?
For what?
Yeah, isn't Europe strong enough to defend itself? But again, there's always behind the scenes influence that can gear one thing towards another, and this is where you see, for example, the commander of NATO will always be a 4-star U.S. general. Yes, there's possibility, but as of today, I am not seeing any indications that tells me exactly that is going to be happening. Yes, the relationship might be strained to a degree, or degraded, or reduced slightly. That depends. We don't know.
But still, it's a great question.
It is interesting.
And the answer is yet to come.
That's true.
We'll watch it we watch this carefully. So
that is correct. So, well, that will end my session today, and we truly thank you for being here. I don't know how to say it. We truly appreciate you taking the time for you to sit down and join us in these discussions, because those are not, as I'm sure you do know, they're scripted. It's just from the heart, whatever comes, because we are discussing, we're exchanging ideas, we're learning from you as well. So it's a both ways, and that's how we intend for it to remain and will be. So as we said last time, and I want just to remind you, be on the lookout for video next week with Cyrus Jensen, and also we are working on completing our website, which you will find very, very interesting because of what's going to be in it. I don't want to spoil it for you. So, and we will of course communicate with you as we get closer to the release date, just for you to guys know about this one. I also want to take this opportunity to thank some of our viewers, Ross, for sending some suggestions for guests.
Oh, we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And for you, if you know some other channel you are very familiar with, or you're subscribing to, or whatever, let them know about our channel. They might not have a chance or had a chance to know about us, and who knows, maybe that way that can facilitate those. But the guest, by the way, the guest you guys suggested, we prepared the list and we sent the email introduction. So we are moving forward with that one. So once again, we want to thank you so much for your support, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And as always, stay informed. Yeah, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.